Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 7 of the Argo Bounce Podcast Show, an independent, non-affiliated talk show devoted to the CFL's 19-time Grey Cup champion, your Toronto Argonauts. I hope everyone's doing well on this Sunday, July 19th, 2026. Unfortunately, it's not another victory show for us. We got to break down the Argos' latest game and loss to Hamilton last night, 24-23. And thank you, everyone, for joining us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, and Instagram. And the Argo Bounce Podcast Show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Good Pods, and wherever podcasts are available. And it's been a busy week for me, Nick, with doing the 40-yard dash on Wednesday, which I did okay, 8.24 seconds and 40 yards, and raised $312, not 312 yards, thank God. And I want to say thank you for being, thank you for sponsoring me and for being a part of that event as well, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Glad to be here. Yeah, it was a fun event, a fun day. I mean, I know it was kind of weird. We had the apocalyptic weather, but we chose to stick it up. You chose to run in it, and yeah, 14 seconds. Just now you're gonna have to work to beat 8 seconds, 8.25. Fantastic time. So we're super happy for you there. Before we begin with anything we want to cover, though, I got the serious clothes on. We have to talk about a pretty serious topic and some pretty sad news that we heard today as we learned the passing of the Saskatchewan Roughriders linebacker Jaden Dalkey. Dalkey, his career was just beginning. A 30-year-old, almost as old as I am, a little older than I am. He played in the CJFL from the Edmonton Wildcats and then played for the University of Alberta in 2022. He was drafted as a 6th round, 54th overall pick to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, was a special teams ace starting out, but then has dressed and played as a mainstay on the defense and linebacking core, one of the team captains, and someone whose career was just beginning to thrive. So we do want to just, on behalf of everybody, want to just put our condolences out there to anybody at Dalkey's family, the Rough Riders organization, everyone in the CFL family, everybody who loved them. It's a real tragedy, and really the fact we don't get to see now what would have become of his career, it's a big loss.
Deepest sympathies and condolences to his family, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and the Canadian Football League as well. And Nick, we also have some other sad news. This coming from the Toronto Argonauts. Nick, if you would like to share this with our audience.
Yeah, well, this aired, I think, either the evening we aired our show after or the next day, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it earlier last week. But of course, by now we heard on July 15th, the Argonauts announced the passing of Jim Corrigal. Jim was one of, if not the best Toronto Argonaut defensive player they've ever had. He's the only one to have been named most outstanding defensive player as a Toronto Argonaut. He was a member of the all-time Argos list in 1997, CFL Hall of Famer in I think it was either 1990 or 1992, so just before his inauguration. 4-time CFL All-Star, 8-time CFL East All-Star. Alumni from Kent State in Ohio. And even after his playing career was done, he's always a big advocate for youth football. He went back and coached for Kent State for 4 seasons, but continued to be involved in football throughout his post-playing career, would always show up to practices and events, help coach high schools. He gave so much time back to youth in Ohio, and being a Barrie born Canadian. He was drafted in the NFL, I believe, in the 2nd round. He chose to play in Canada for the Argonauts instead. So it's a tremendous loss. And I mean, you see the contrast. You have a legend of the Toronto Argonauts and Jim Corrigal, and then you have the loss of Jaden Dalkey, a guy whose career was just beginning. So it's been a really tough week for Canadian football fans in Toronto and in Saskatchewan.
And even, I know this isn't football related, but the Toronto Blue Jays lost Dwayne Ward, who passed away of natural causes this weekend at their back-to-back World Series as well. Dwayne was only 62 years. So even though this isn't football related, deepest sympathies and condolences to Dwayne Ward's family and his teammates and the Toronto Blue Jays organization.
Yeah.
And Nick, we've got some viewers watching as well. Ken is watching. He says, good evening. George Brown says, sending prayers from St. Louis. Robbie's watching from Buffalo. Hello, Chris and Nick. Go Argos. Close game last night. I don't want to talk about it. We will talk about it. And George Brown, rough day for CFL fans. Absolutely. Nick, got to ask you this. I know you're not a big fan of retiring numbers, but do you think in this case, Jim Corrigal's number will get retired by the franchise some point?
No, we've had this argument before, so I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, they're not going to retire any more numbers. It's too difficult to in football when you've got so many players. If they did, it'd be like that one episode in Futurama where the Yankees retired all the whole numbers, and so you had to be like number 2/5. Yeah. Like, so you just.
But my point is, the retiring numbers should be only for special great players. And Jim Corrigal was a great special player, just like Terry Greer. Certain guys, I'm not saying guys who had very good careers or good careers. I agree. Some of the Yankees and some of these teams have gotten out of hand. Even the Pistons have probably retired a little too many numbers for players that I don't think were special. To me, the Detroit Red Wings have only got 7 numbers retired in their 100-year history. You have to be a special player to get your retired number. I do think if the Argos are going to do it at least one more time, I think Jim Corrigal, it would be a great to honor him as well.
Well,
in my opinion, we don't have to agree on that, Nick. I see your point too. It gets silly with some of these teams retiring every Joe Schmuck's number, but I just think certain players, special players, should have their number retired. And I think Jim Corrigal, when you think of all-time great Argos defensive players, he's one of them.
Yeah, well, he certainly is, as we've said, he is one of the most important defensive players and one of the most important Toronto Argonauts ever. But yeah, as I've made my point out, it's hard, and that's why you have the all-time Argos list, because it gets difficult when you determine whose numbers deserve retiring. Do we retire Doug Flutie's number 2, even though he only played 2 seasons but holds pretty much every major passing record?
I would say so. Yeah,
after just 2 years.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Well, now we're up to 3 more retired numbers. So that's the problem. That's why we have the all-time Argos list.
Terry Greer, the greatest receiver. Doug Flutie, probably the greatest Argos quarterback, and Jim Corrigal. Those guys are the 3 best players at their positions in team history. So if they can only retire 3 more numbers in the rest of my life, Jim Corrigal, Terry Greer, and Doug Flutie, and that's it.
Well, as I said, we'll move on and we'll agree to disagree
Yes.
on it. But
Yes.
yeah, as we
Yeah.
see in the comments right now, our friend George in St. Louis is asking about how the Hamilton crowd was
Yeah.
last night, how things went, and I think that's maybe a good thing we can start getting into just with how the game was. And I mean, there was a lot of Argo fans there. There was also a lot of Hamilton fans there. It was probably a slightly better crowd than we've seen in Hamilton already at the beginning of the season. I haven't looked at the official numbers, but it was, yeah, it was,
20,000.
yeah,
About
it was still
20,000.
not full. It wasn't a sellout crowd, and it wasn't. I think it kind of didn't really meet the expectations of anyone. It seemed like nobody was particularly happy, except maybe Cat fans at the way the game ended with the win. But yeah, made it. Yeah, it was difficult to call it a home game.
Ken is watching on Facebook as well. Thank you, Ken, George, and Robbie for watching. Tea Time won't be too happy. Gren number 2. Well, like I said, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But Nick, what was the environment like? Like, what was the weather like overall? They had to delay the game a little bit too.
Game wasn't delayed. It started on time. There was no
Did it?
big issues
Okay.
with the game. Yeah, the smoke had cleared. We actually had quite significant amount of rain. Actually, I won't go into it, but I was actually clearing out the basement. We had some flooding in our basement with how bad the rain was. We got a ton of rain in the span of 2 hours, I would say, and we even had a tornado warning in our area in the Oakville, Mississauga area. It got that bad, but fortunately, everything was okay. And but fortunately, with that rain, it helped clear what was left of the smoke away. And as we saw today, we had perfect weather and a break from that sort of apocalyptic wildfire smoke that we dealt with during the run, your 40-yard dash back on Wednesday. That caused both the Argos and the Ticats to really have to put their practices on hold and do what little things they could inside, film studies, extra weight room time, not being actually out on the field getting to carry out plays like you normally would.
George Brown watching on YouTube says, I'm surprised the fires didn't affect the CFL schedules as much as I thought.
Yeah, I mean, we got lucky. Like the only game that really got directly affected from the smoke was the Argos Ticats game, and fortunately, the rain came at the perfect time. It cleared it up that right before the game started. It was sunny and it was perfect football weather. The field was maybe a little damp when it started, but over time it dried up. Didn't notice it when we went onto the field after the game. So.
And George Brown watching on YouTube again, it says, when I went 2 years ago on Labor Day, it was rough.
Yeah, I mean, that's to get into that point. Like that's some of the big challenge that we had with this whole thing with the tickets to the Hamilton game. A lot of fans, Argo fans, just aren't comfortable going to Hamilton, and they are a pretty hostile crowd. I mean,
not like they used to be compared to the 70s and 80s and 90s. I think it's mellowed out compared. I don't think the rivalry is as hostile as it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Nick, in my opinion.
When you have a 55-year-old man telling a 10-year-old kid that who's an Argos fan that you suck, your team effing sucks, all this crap to a kid, like it still comes as pretty intimidating. And I'm not saying it doesn't. Yeah, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen in Toronto. It happens both ways, but that's the relationship of the nature of this relationship between the Argos fans and Ticat fans. It gets pretty hostile, and I mean, I've never seen in any sports league, like in this particular rivalry between the Argos and the Ticats fans, because it goes both ways, that the amount of open hostility in focusing on how much the other one sucks more than focusing on your own team's success, or rather than supporting your own team, the mentality is Argos suck or Ticats suck. Like it works both ways. I mean, we see it I guess too in hockey with the Leafs and the Habs to an extent. You probably see it a bit like with the Yankees and the Red Sox maybe, although I don't know that relationship quite as well. But this one has got to be one of the most hostile in professional sports. It's just so rooted in negativity for the other, just out of hatred.
back in the 70s and 80s, Argo fans wouldn't even dare go to Hamilton. I agree, Nick, it's still a little hostile, but it's not as bad as it was in the 70s and 80s and 90s, where people were throwing batteries at the players and at the Argo fans. I really do feel it's a lot better now than it was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't think the rivalry is as hatred as it was back in the 80s. To me, that's when the rivalry was at its peak in the 1980s. Because every
Well,
year in the 80s, it was either the Cats or the Argos in the Grey Cup.
well, for the last 3 years, I've been to every Argo game that they've played in Hamilton, and there's still the rivalry is still there, the hatred is still there, and
I
it
agree,
continues.
but it's
Maybe
not
not.
to the point. It's not to the point of it was back in the golden era. It's still there. I agree with you, Nick.
Well, but and again, well, if we want to get back to sort of the core thing with this whole thing, it makes it really hard then to try to sell it to Argo fans. Like, hey, you have to play a home game in the city that hates you the most. Like, how do you sell that to fans, especially when we've gone now? This is what, week 6 or 7 with the buys, and this is the first time that we haven't had to travel more than an hour, or take a plane, or take a bus, or take a train. I guess, sorry, yeah, you take a bus there, but to travel an extended period of time of like 4 hours or more to go to see your own team play, and this is nothing about it felt like a home game. Like, they didn't even do a moment of silence for Jim Corrigal. That was the least. If you want to make the littlest attempt of making it be a home game, that was something you could have done easily for 1 minute, and you couldn't even do that. That's
Well,
how little of a home game it felt.
and the thing is, even though he didn't play for the Tiger Cats, Jim Corrigal was a CFL legend, and that they really missed a spot there, Nick. And you know what? If we can get Mike Hogan on our show next week, I'm going to bring that up to Mike, or you can bring it up to Mike as well, because even though the gentleman played for the Toronto Argonauts, he was a CFL legend like Angelo Moscow was.
That's it.
And
I was trying to look back on whether or not when he passed, because Hamilton was in Ottawa or in Toronto, the
they
3
brought it
days
up. They mentioned it.
thereafter. And
They mentioned it.
yeah,
They mentioned
I thought
it.
we mentioned it. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't remember, so I was trying to bring
Yeah.
it up on the replays. But like,
Well,
just the littlest
and
semblance of
yeah,
decency you could do.
yeah. And in that game was a Toronto home game, Adam Goss should have been the public address announcer, as far as
Yeah,
I'm
it
concerned.
was. Yeah, I mean, that's why I said game ups was zero difference from what it would have been from an Argos game.
And the
All
thing,
the advertisements, all the commercial
yeah,
breaks, all
yeah,
Pigskin Pete did his Oski Wee
yeah,
Wee thing
yeah.
every 5 minutes. Like,
If I
nothing.
wanted to do that, and if I wanted to come to the game, I couldn't come yesterday. I wasn't even, I was actually run down yesterday. But if I wanted to come to the game yesterday, I would have had to go to the Tiger Cats media people instead of Chris Belnovich, when it should have been Chris that was in charge of it, because it was technically an Argos home game. So Nick, we do agree on this.
Yeah, well, when it comes down to it, I think the biggest mistake was that there was any conceivable idea of trying to promote it as in Argo's home game, but not really. It's like, to try to, they should have just said it was, we're trading 3 home games for 3 away games, and taking half the routes, not trying to do any of this double talk of trying to make any of it sound like home. That's the one thing, to Ken's point, I will agree with, though. The tailgate experience there is always great. That's certainly the top point of going to Hamilton, and the tailgate experience, because it's all people who truly have passion for their team. The people that care the most go to these tailgates and hang out sometimes 6 hours before the game. So you have a real fan base, a camaraderie among both Argos fans and Tigats fans. But it seems once everybody kind of gets in the stadium, and the game goes on, and in the heat of the moment, that's when things start to get intense. And I'm not criticizing the staff themselves, because, like, Ticats game day staff are just doing their job. But it's just to try to make it seem like a home game when it's clearly not in any respect. It just doesn't make any marketing sense, because it just, yeah, you're telling people to go to the city that hates you the most.
Yep. And we got George Brown, who's watching on YouTube as well. Well, if it makes you feel any better, it still is bad when the Patriots fan beat up a Miami fan in Gillette that killed the person. That is true, George. And also, Nick, when I used to go to NFL games in Buffalo, the Bills Dolphins rivalry is kind of like the Tiger Cats Argos rivalry. After a game, there's a couple Miami fans. They were happy their team won, and the Bills fans sucker punched them, knocked them right out, and nobody did a damn thing about it. And I'm like, we love our teams, but some people take it too far. And George has got a point too. A Patriots fan killed a Miami fan. I don't think it was done intentionally, but still, it's ridiculous. Some fans take it way too much. And
Yeah.
hey, we all have our teams we dislike. I don't like the Dallas Cowboys, but if I saw a Dallas Cowboys game at a stadium, I'm not going to do anything stupid. Like, I might razz them about their team, but I'm not going to do anything that's going to. Some people take it too far.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it, and that's the whole problem though with it being in Hamilton but being marketed as a home game, because that's why they had a watch party in Toronto for people who didn't want to go to the game, because in both ways, there's Ticats fans who don't want to go to Toronto for being razzed for being a Ticats fan. There's Argo fans who don't want to go to Hamilton for being razzed out being an Argos fan. Like, and it happens. Like, I know it, and I go to the game, and I before and after I get at least 5 Ticat fans who come out to me and say Argos suck or whatever, and it's like, if you have thick skin, it's fine, but there's some people who just emotionally can't handle that. Like, it's not. People take things too far, ripping on teams for the negatives of stuff rather than just focusing on supporting their team. And I mean, and it sucks because the thing I love most about going to Hamilton as a fan is that we get to go to after the game, we get to go on the field, but
Yep.
I've every time after every game, I get to go behind the team bus and say hi to the guys as they head back. And whether it's like this game last night that they lost, a heartbreaker, or whether it's a game like the Labor Day game last year that we won, it's being there to support the team. And that's where I think this whole situation hurts for guys like me and other people like yourself, other season ticket holders. It feels that the people who give the most amount of their time and the most amount of their effort and the most amount of their money to support the team get the short end of the stick when we can't watch our team play at home for 7 weeks and not get anything to make up for it at this point. Like, it's the fact that we're constantly the ones that are getting the schedule adjustments and losing time out on that we should be able to support our team just as much as Hamilton or Saskatchewan or Winnipeg can.
Unfortunately, I think it might get worse, Nick, with the Argos now being under the Rogers umbrella. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope things do get better. But unfortunately, Rogers Communications, their number one priority are the Blue Jays, the Raptor, the Toronto FC, and anything that makes them a lot of money. So we'll see what happens in the next year or two with the Argos ownership under Rogers Communications. And by the way, Nick, since I have you on, I want to give a shout out to James from the Toronto Argonauts season ticket holder. I actually emailed him about my ticket. I told him about my situation, and James took care of it. So I've got actually a couple extra tickets for the home opener against Calgary. I'm going to probably go as media, so I'm probably going to end up giving the tickets away to friends and that. But I want to say thank you to James from the Toronto Argonauts ticket for taking care of my needs and also explaining to me they had 2 season ticket reps recently resign as well. So Argo fans, if you are dealing with the team right now, bear in mind they're probably got a bare bones operation right now currently.
Well, you know who to thank for that. 6 months in the job, and the first thing you do is fire half the staff to cover costs. That's I mean, and that's why they're dealing with the situation now. You have ticket reps that got to cover multiple branches of multiple different teams and everything. So it's a frustrating situation, and it just, I mean, we talked about it before, but it just sometimes feels like there's no accountability for it with this faceless void corporation that that owns everything.
You can get away with it with the Blue Jays and the Raptors in the FC, but people that are diehard Argonaut fans, eventually at some point, Nick, they're going to say enough, and not renew their season tickets or stop going to the games altogether. And the Argonauts cannot afford to lose any of their fan base right now.
Yeah, and I mean
It
that's
should
what
be.
challenge. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, that's what challenges the popularity. I mean, how I've always looked at it is that the Jays play 85 or whatever home games at 160. The Leafs play 40 home games, and like it's the most important thing on planet Earth in Toronto that day. We play 8-9 games all year. I make sure those 9 games are the most important games on the planet, and that I would go through hell or high water to make sure I get to go for and attend. And it's just there's not enough people who take the same level of passion and attention and focus on those games. And until we see that where it starts to drive the profits, then you start to see it snowball. But if they're going to continue to shoot themselves in the foot by playing on the opposite side of the country, and where you're not going to do anything to grow the fan base or convince people to come out to the games to support the team, that's where you're going to have this continuing negative feedback loop continuing to revolve.
Ken's watching on Facebook. He has another comment. I had a Hamilton fan thank me yesterday for coming to the game. There are some good Cat fans too. You can't judge the whole group of them by a few knuckleheads. Every sports team's fan base, there's a few knuckleheads and stuff like that. But I've gone to the Hamilton a number of times as media, as a fan at Hamilton Stadium, and people have been okay with me as well. I've never had any issues going to the stadium as a fan. And going as media, everybody's been really good with me too. So it's good that Ken had a good experience last night. Nick, you know what? Let's get to the game and that, if you don't mind. Then we could do another show on this subject as well.
Too long.
But yeah, Nick, let's overall assessment of the 24-23 loss to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I know people are upset about it. It's not the end of the world. Okay, 2-4 is not a great start, but it's not like this team is bad. They could easily, Nick, in my opinion, the Argos really should be 4-2. They really should be 4-2 over 2-4. And this was a winnable game. The unfortunately part, and Mike Miller said this in the post game conference too. It wasn't one or two plays that did us in. It was a number of plays, and I really thought the Argos got off to a good start, 7-0. That is a positive. But the negative was they did nothing the rest of the first half. They fell behind 14-7 at halftime, and then they tried a ridiculous 57-yard kick. I'm not going to criticize Liam on that, the 57-yard kick, because I don't care if you're in college, the NFL, or the CFL, 57 yards is still a long distance, even today. So I'm not upset about that decision. Yeah, and then in the third quarter, they fell behind 21-7, and then they got the offense going. Nick, do you feel they should use an up-tempo, no-huddle offense a lot sooner than they did in that game last night? Because the second half, the offense was much better than it was in the first half.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to rewatch it before tonight, so I don't have I haven't really had a chance to really do a deep dive to look into where it went right or where it went wrong. But I feel like it did seem to feel to me like in that first half it was they were trying too hard to go for that home run play, the deep ball to try to make a big play happen, and it led to the same problems that they had the week before, where they just weren't sustaining drives enough early, so they were forced 2 and out or maybe 1 first down, punting the ball. And I know I was actually surprised by the final possession time by the end of the game, because it felt in that whole first half that it felt like we barely ever had the ball, and then Hamilton was just, they were playing that, as you said, a slow, methodical drives where they were just taking their time, chewing it up the clock, marching down the field. That's the thing that wins games. And the Argos sometimes are just trying too hard to score too quick. And as you mentioned, they played well in the second half. They regrouped. They got that up tempo offense going. They're finally getting some momentum, but it just became too late. They can't they can't keep waiting until the fourth quarter to try to make things happen. They gotta try to get something more sustained earlier in the game. And it's weird too, because one of the things I know you bring up a lot is the running game, that they need to run the ball. And they ran, when they did run the ball this week, they ran really effectively, but for whatever reason they didn't continue to work to
They got
run
away
it
from it.
while it was working well. Yeah, and it and yeah, trying some of those deep passes. Hamilton was really good at taking away the middle to deep passes that Chad Kelly's
Yep.
good with. And whether or not there was miscommunication or drop balls or just Hamilton ended up managing to dive in and cover the short throw, the screen, anything like that. They just were never really able to sustain drives and get a couple first downs and build some momentum after that initial drive, which really set them back. And then defensively, as I mentioned before, the challenges were these struggles, especially in that first half, to get Trey Ford off the field. I don't know the exact stat, but I think before the fourth quarter, it was something like 11 for 13 or something on second down conversions. It didn't matter whether it was second and 3 or second and 13. They were converting on second down every time. And even if you held them off the scoreboard for the most part, it just tired your defense out. And the only reason that they slowed up in the fourth quarter was because they had both their tackles out, and like a fullback was playing guard or something. They had no offense left in the fourth quarter, which is why they had to buckle down defensively.
The Argos need to be a little more patient and take what the defense gives them. Ben Grant has said this on TSN 1052. The teams are going to know that the Argos love that home run ball, and Chad Kelly has a gunslinger mentality. They're gonna try to take that away because they know the Argos offense tends to be impatient. And to me, I agree with Ben Grant on this. They need to be more patient. And if the big bomb or the big throws aren't there, take what the defense gives you. If they're giving you 5, 10, 15 yards here, take it. Eventually, then it'll open up for the offense at some point. But it seems like they're like, no, we want to do long bombs. They want to be like the St. Louis Rams in 1999. And to me, they need to be a little more patient. And I agree with Ben Grant on this. This offense needs to be a little more patient.
The best offensive play of the game, I thought, was in the fourth quarter there in that last drive, was where they ran the fake jet sweep and Chad ran it the other way. And as soon as he brought the ball up, they react in the pass coverage, the jump or whatever, to try to block it. And Chad ran there 30 yards down the field or whatever it was, untouched. Those are, I think, the kind of things that we saw there that demonstrated that they weren't expecting those types of plays, because Chad's so used and skilled at being able to throw the ball in that second, third depth. Sometimes it's just they need to take what they're given. If they're playing the deep coverage really well, try to just get your first downs, switch to a kind of a West Coast, sort of just get some quick hitters in and just move the ball down. It's not fun to play, but they know that once they bite them in on that short coverage enough times, then you have your opportunities down the field on some unfavorable or favorable one-on-one matchups.
Nick, what were some of the positives to take out of this loss to the Tiger-Cats? I know most times when you lose a game, there's no positives, but I thought there was a number of positives in this game as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think offensively, well, we saw them do well in the final drive, that they were able to finally start hitting some of those medium to deeper throws that they were struggling with. We talked about the running game, that this was one of the first games where it never really felt like their running game got stuffed, whether it's Hamilton just not being a good run defense or their run blocking got a little better. They succeeded there. And I mean, as much as we talked about defensive struggles in second down, they still held Hamilton to low scoring. And we kind of talked about this last week. Toronto should be a team that, the way they operate, they're a 30-point a night team when they play. And if your defense is holding an opposition to the low 20s, regardless of how or what, they should be in a position to win. And they were like, I don't want to blame it entirely on Lirim or the field goal, the extra point or whatever, but they were, ultimately at the end of the game, they were in a position to win it, and they didn't win it. But the defense was at that, they played good enough that they kept them in a spot where they were able to win.
Nick, I know I'm going to get some heat for this question, but do you feel the Argos should bring in a kicker, which Liam's struggling this season? It's not just been one game. He struggled the whole season. And the 57-yard kick, you know what? Give him a mulligan on that, because for any kicker in any league, 57 yards is a long distance. But to miss the extra point and the 31-yard field goal at the end of the game, and everybody's blaming the new holder. The new holder, TSN showed the video highlights, did his job. So Liam's had a great CFL career. He was in the NFL for a number of years. He's a great guy in that. But is it to the point where the Argos are going to start, hey, do we trust this guy? Because the field goal at the end, 31 yards, there was no weather conditions. It was not blocked. He just completely missed it. And then the extra point too, that's your kicker has to come through at that. I understand 57 yards. That I'm not upset about, but the extra point and the 31-yard kick at the end of the game, he's had we know what he's like on the field and off the field. He's a great guy. But my point is it time to maybe bring in somebody in as competition for him? Because you don't want to go into games where, hey, we don't trust him now, because you always want to be able to trust your field goals. So I don't know, Nick, if you agree with me, but I'm thinking maybe it's getting very close to time to bring in another kicker just to see in practice and compete with them, because you're gonna need either Liam or whoever the kicker is at some point in the season, because Nick, you know this, and Argo fans know this. There's going to be more games this year where it's going to come down to an extra point or a field goal, and you want to be able to trust your kicker. And for the most part, I'd say 98% of the time, Liam's Mr. Reliable. But this year, he has struggled through the first 6 games, in my opinion.
Well, they did sign Brady Lidster from the University of Windsor, so they did sign another kicker recently. So there is that element of whether or not they're gonna go switch to him right away or still give Liam some leash. I think if it was any other player, like we look at some of the struggles we had like before we got Liam back, between, I think it was Swayze Waters, I think, between Swayze Waters and Boris Beatty and then Liram, there was that kind of gap period where you had guys that we tried out that just weren't working. I'm thinking of guys like Ronnie Pfeffer from Laurier and Tyler Kapringa and guys like that. And just it didn't matter who you put out. I could have kicked the ball better. That's the way it felt like. That all fans thought like that the field goal team was truly awful. But I think with Liram's success that he's had, he still stands with records that he's the best kicker the Argos have had in terms of accuracy. I think he's earned that a little bit of leash, and I think, and I'm not blaming it or using this to justify it, but I think because of the whole Guelph situation, he probably earns a little bit of leash on that.
Okay.
So that's where I think where it will really be kind of the decision is I don't, they might try it this week. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think it'll be really once that first week back in Toronto happens. I think that's going to ultimately be where they kind of make that final decision. And we know that Liram's one of these guys who's he has a full-time career outside of just football. So what's been a challenge, like last year, there was all this talk when Brett Lowther, right, he was struggling in Saskatchewan. It was like, oh well, the Argos aren't going to be in the playoffs, so are they going to trade Liram? And it's like, no, because he has a full-time job in downtown Toronto. And I mean, if you're in his situation where it's different when you work downtown and you have to come to exhibition, which is in less than an hour away on the train. Well, now you have to go all the way to Guelph, which is well over an hour away. So that makes a huge difference. So that's where I think there's that. And then of course there was also of course the passing away of Coach Kick in the off season, one of his mentors. So there's that I'm sure plays a part in it too, in terms of the sports psychology aspect. And I can't say to what's going through his head. I mean, like any athlete, if you're a guy who misses the game winning field goal or goal or whatever, like you feel horrible. Like and I don't blame him. Like anyone would feel like that. So it's it's how you then mentally prepare yourself, and to lose a big piece of a mentor, someone who's always been there for you to help you refocus in times of struggle. That's going to be a challenge to overcome for anybody. So that's where I think. So long story short, I don't expect him to replace next week, but yeah, if it continues and it continues to be a thing of concern, we saw it happen with Lowther in Saskatchewan last year, and I could very well see the same thing happen again this year to Liam.
Nick, and then Nick, one thing too, pro football, NFL, CFL, it's a business, and we all know how valuable Liam has been in the past. Two-time Grey Cup champion, he holds a lot of the Argos records. But football is also, what have you done for me today? What he done in the past is great, and we all respect and appreciate it. But football, pro football, is a business, and it's a results oriented as well. I do agree with you. I think for now the job is still his, but I want to ask you, if he struggles against BC, how much longer do you go with this? Because we're not talking, okay, 1 or 2 games. We're going to be talking game 7 now. So it's going to be interested in the game against BC. What I'm going to look at is Liam and the kicking too. Obviously, not having John Haggerty, his regular holder, okay, that could be a little factor too. But
Yep.
to blame it on the new holder, no, I really don't think so. So I do agree, Liam will get a mulligan because of his past success. But at some point, they've got to start getting more production out of him, because in the CFL, you need to get every point you can get. And now Peter Dalarkowski did a tweet X this morning saying he's a Hamilton Tiger Cat, former Cat, and he's a pro Hamilton guy. But he said the Argos should have tied that game up last night with the Rouge. But you know what? I'm okay with the new rule of where the missed field goal goes right in the stands. Why should you get rewarded with overtime for missing a field goal? I do like that new CFL rule where you don't get a Rouge for the ball going out of bounds.
Well, I'm not going to argue over the rule changes, because the fact of the matter is that the rule is the rule that stands. Yep. Whether or not we want to argue that, oh, well, back then it wouldn't have been a Rouge or it would have been, it doesn't matter. The rule is right now that it's not a Rouge. So that just, again, it puts more pressure. You have to be that much more precise in ensuring that you make your field goals, because this is the consequence now. You don't get that point for field position like you used to in the past, and unless you're intentionally going for a kick where if it just barely goes through the field goal post and has to be fielded in play, which as we saw there, people aren't trying for. You're trying to make the field goal for the 3 points. So that's just another layer of pressure. But yeah, to argue about the rule in itself, it's irrelevant. It's the rule's the rule.
By the way, at halftime, I would have had Chad Kelly throw up a Hail Mary, because 57 yards to me, it's still kind of pushing it nowadays. I would have called a Hail Mary there, because Chad Kelly's got the arm strength, and you got those great receivers, and who knows, you could get a penalty flag drawn on it as well. So that's something I kind of was like, maybe they should have just gone for the Hail Mary there, and they have so many great receivers. One of them could have come down, or there could have been a PI call, and they could have got a field goal out of that from a closer range, in my opinion.
It's tomato at that point. At that point, as long as it doesn't get intercepted or returned for a touchdown, field goal team didn't do that this week, so there's at least that to look positively on. It's at the end of the day, whichever pick your poison you choose, it's you're having an extremely low percentage play to try to generate some point before the half. I mean, the other option, of course, is have Haggerty or what's his name? They had Burnip replacing him this week. Have him try to punt it in the end zone, fielded for a point. That's technically now an option too, but it's low percentage no matter what you do, so it doesn't really matter to me.
Do you feel the Argos defense is improving each week? And who stood out for you in this game on the defensive side of the football from this game?
Uh, yeah, I would argue they're doing better in terms of bend that don't break. They're keeping teams from scoring massive amounts of points. Like ever since the Calgary game, the amount of points they're giving up has been reduced. But I think they're still struggling with things that were problems last year. They're giving too much separation on short passes. They let like Trey Ford, who you know is a running quarterback, scramble. They're great at stopping the run defense, run offense, but they've always been good at that. Just whatever it is in pass protection, whether it's secondary, it's the linebackers, it's not having Cam Judge, it's whatever. Like they have a whole bunch of veteran guys they brought in, and they're still struggling with this. So I don't know if they're. I just feel like the problems are still persistent that you would hope to have gone away now, even though at the end of the day it's resulting in less points being scored against. It's just super frustrating when you have constantly second and tens that are being converted. You can't let that happen.
Their second down defense has to get better. And how much do they miss Robert Priester in the secondary?
Yeah, I think it's a tough loss. I mean, he went down in Ottawa near in the very beginning of the season. So, yeah, for him, a veteran leader, I think he'd be one of these guys among like the 7-8 year CFL veterans who's been in the league a long time. So, yeah, it's definitely a huge challenge. I mean, I'll give some credit to the guys they've found and they've put in. Like James Caesar has looked really good. Owen Goss has really stepped up for replacing Cam Judge. Bolden, in my opinion, had a pretty good game. So there's still a lot of positives to take from, but it's just I don't know. There's just something where we've seen in the past, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where there'd be that really key defensive stand or key interception or fumble, turnover, whatever that the defense was able to get. They're just they're just not at that level elite, and I don't know if it's because we were just so blessed in having a defense that was that godlike, amazingly good, or if this is average. And I mean, you could argue that because at the beginning of the season, it seemed like every team that was passing the ball really, really well, and defenses were struggling. So it's really hard for me right now to tell whether this is the exception, this is the norm, this is the mean, this is overperforming, this is underperforming, because you can't compare it to previous seasons. You have to compare it to the average of the league right now, and they're getting there. They're certainly better than they were against Calgary, but they're not at that level that we were so spoiled with 2-3 years ago.
I would say my Argos defensive player of the game for this game was Ralph Hawley. I thought Ralph had a good game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Ralph played well. I think the O line, if they had just done, if they had contained Ford a little bit more, I think that's where they really struggled. If they had have done that, I think that was kind of one of the other shortcomings they had from this week, that Ford was able to get outside and scramble, and a couple were bad angles, a couple were missed tackles, but that's something that you can't let happen when you know you're playing a guy like Trey Ford.
Look for BC to expose the Argos too. I know Nathan Rourke won't be playing. I'm assuming he's going to be out a while. So I guess Bryce will be in. I'm imagine the BC Lions are going to watch the video footage and say, hey, look, we're going to have him do RPO like Trey Ford. And by the way, in my opinion, Trey Ford should be the Tiger Cats quarterback for the rest of this season until Levi Mitchell comes back, which I don't think it'll be this year. I think Trey Ford right now should be their quarterback going forward.
I just don't know if what he's doing is sustainable. That's the big question. I mean,
he's got a bigger upside than the other guy, Jake, and the rest of these guys they brought in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also that's it. We don't know what happens when they play a defense like Saskatchewan's or Montreal's. That could go very differently. I mean, but yeah, I mean, in fairness, I mean, Dolagala did play Saskatchewan, and there were a lot of mistakes. But Kenny, I was talking to a friend of mine, shout out Dean. We were talking about it, and the receivers, Keandre Smith straight up said in the press conference after the game, do not blame Jake Dolagala for that loss. Us as wide receivers are to blame for that. Keandre Smith dropped that one pass that hit him square in the hands. When was the last time you saw Kenny Lawler fumble? Like, so there's the wide receivers, give them credit. He had the guts to take apologies, take the blame for that it was as much on the wide receivers letting the Ticats offense down as it was on Dolagala.
Ken, who's watching on Facebook again, says, so much for that 26-9 lead. Red Blacks and Bombers 26-26 heading to overtime now. I'm telling you, if Ottawa loses this game, if they were up 26-9 at home and they lose this game, somebody's going to get fired. I don't think it'll be Dinwiddie, but somebody on that staff's going to get fired.
They had the Dinwiddie special. They had a 3rd and goal on the one in that game, and they couldn't convert it. So it's not looking good if they aren't able to hold it. Ottawa chose to start with the ball, or I don't know how the coin toss went, but Ottawa's starting on offense on the pit side of the field, and I think they're a yard short of first down on 1st and 10, so it's 2nd and 1.
Nick, my Argos player of the game against Hamilton, I'm going to go with Chad Kelly. Slow first half, but 25 for 35 overall, 322 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I thought he was probably the most consistent Argo in the second half. I thought he was their best player last night.
Yeah, I mean, I like I kind of said before, I would have liked to just seen a bit more in the first half. I thought the rushing was good. Like I really liked the way Sam Hicks and Isaiah Smith looked with rushing. I mean, Smith had 3 carries for 15 yards. Sam Hicks had 7 carries for 47, so an average of almost 7 yards a carry and a 20-yarder. I also want to give a shout out to Tyler Coleman on the offense. He had another solid game, 6 receptions for 6 targets,
106 yards
for 7. Yeah,
104 yards. Including that 41-yard catch.
Yeah, exactly. Nick, almost 20 yards to catch.
Jake Herslow, I'm shocked he hasn't been back in the lineup yet.
Well, the problem they had this week specifically had to do with player personnel because they had no Canadian starters aside from Shannon Kongbo on the defense side. They had Bolden start, so he was an American. So they, other than that Kongbo Shan combination, everywhere on the defense side was American or non-Canadian. And, if Cam Judge had started, there would have been that extra linebacker spot. That's where I think they felt in trouble, and they had to start Tristan Reddy and Dress. And they also had, they had Miller backing up for common spot. But I think, you could maybe argue whether or not they should have had Herslow instead of Miller. But a big reason for that was that they had to start extra Canadians on offense that they probably wouldn't have because of the scenario on defense. They just didn't have the bodies in the Canadian for the roster.
Nick, any noticeable injuries from this game against Hamilton?
I'm not 100%. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to really review the tape, so I didn't see how the injuries really turned out during the game. But it didn't seem to me like there was anything major. Like it wasn't as bad as Hamilton, at least, where we saw that the Hamilton O-line, they're having, like I said before, a fullback playing on the O-line because they were losing that many bodies. I know we saw Andrew Chatfield go down a couple more times, which it's becoming a little concerning because it seems every he's a great guy, a great player defensively, but when you see him going down 2-3 times a game, and this is like the 2nd or 3rd game in a row where we've seen that, it does become a little concerning. But I think overall, I think we got away relatively unscathed by comparison.
Yeah, Cam was saying Chatfield, and then he just wrote injured twice. Watch this one. And their next game is Saturday against the BC Lions. So it'll be interesting to see if he's in practice this week, or they hold him out for a game, by the way. And somebody put a player on a 6-game list. Oh, Zach Collaros. 6 game. I believe Winnipeg put him on 6 games. As far as I'm concerned, Nick, Zach Caleros is a Hall of Famer. He's a bomber legend. He's a multiple time Grey Cup champion. He's got a wife, 2 young kids. I really feel at this point of his career, it's time for him to retire. I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but I really think it's time for him to retire and give the ball to Drew Brown going forward.
Well, we'll see how things go in this game because Ottawa scored the field goal, so they're up 29-26, and it looks like Andrew, or I was going to say Andrew Harris, Oliveira, just ran it for got a first down, so they're moving down the field to try to win this game. Yeah, I mean, I find with the Claros thing that's so hard is the ambiguity of it. It's like we keep hearing it's a neck injury, it's not head, so it's not concussion. So there's some ambiguity with that, and it's not. I mean, at the end of the day, it's speculation, and we respect their right to not know what it is exactly he's dealing with. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be his team if he's healthy enough to play, but I think it's also like, yeah, he will ultimately, it'll come down to him whether he wants to make that decision and nobody else.
Nick, as we wrap the show up in a couple of minutes, just thoughts on next week's opponent, the BC Lions, who are 1-4, who will most likely be without quarterback Nathan Rourke again, and the Argos already faced a couple of teams with backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's the scary part. I mean, we faced Drew Brown and couldn't beat him. We faced Trey Ford last week and couldn't do it, and now we gotta play probably someone behind Nathan Rourke. If we don't win this game and we go 0-3 against teams playing their backup quarterbacks, it's big trouble. I think if like the difference between going 2-5 now, I think if you lose this game in BC versus being 3-4, like that's still decent considering all the challenges, the adversity you've had to face on this road trip.
Yeah.
But if you go that big a hole, it starts to become concerning if they're going to be able to dig out of it. And I think we've seen that BC's been a struggling team defensively. They absolutely have to put 30 to 35 points at least this BC game. If we've talked about it, if they're a team that needs to put up 30 points a game to win, they didn't do that the last 2 weeks and they lost to teams they never should have lost to. They have to find a way to put 30 points on the board, and I would argue they need to put at least 15 by the first half. We can't go into halftime with one touchdown being down 20-7 or 15-7. We've got to be able to put 15 on our own up.
To me, this is becoming close to a must-win. I really feel it's a must-win because after this game, I believe they're off until August 6th against Calgary. And Calgary is going to be a very good football club, regardless if the game's in Toronto. So I really feel this is a big game for the Argos, for not just Liam, but I think for the entire team. And I think a win for the Argos against BC on the road, get back to 3-4, which isn't bad, will get them in a better frame of mind for their home opener against Calgary on August 6th at 7:30, in my opinion. And I don't see why the Argos can't put up 30 to 40 points on BC Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get a good watch of the BC Edmonton game on Friday. I only saw from like the end of the third quarter to the fourth, so I only got to see the very end of the game. So it's kind of hard for me to see what happened. I mean, BC shut down Rankin, which was huge. I know that much, but at the end of the day, I mean, we haven't been a run first team anyways. We don't have one guy like Rankin that we target. Chad's ability, one of the benefits of his offense is that Chad can get the ball to anybody. Whoever's open is going to be the best receiver of the game. We've seen Common have 100-yard games. We've seen Coxie have 100-yard games. We've seen Metal, Unger, whoever's hot is open. So that part doesn't bother me. We talked about how good Edmonton's quarterback Fajardo has looked, but it seemed to me, from what my dad said, he was pretty pedestrian in this game. It might have been one of the worst games he's played as a quarterback, at least since Edmonton.
But they won. They won.
Yeah, but
And
they
the
only put
past
17 points on the board or 19 points
but
up.
but you know what? I'd rather win with 19 than lose with 50. Bottom line is they got the job done. They won the game, and their Elks are off to a 5-1 start. If this was last year, they would have lost that game. So the culture, the losing culture is changing in Edmonton. I still think they have a lot to improve upon, even though they're 5-1, but they still managed to win the game. Hey Nick, as we wrap up the show, I want to get your thoughts quickly here. Which team has been the biggest surprise in the 2026 CFL season so far, and who's been the biggest disappointment so far?
Well, I call me a homer, but I think it's safe to say the biggest disappointment has been the Toronto Argonauts so far. The amount of I know I tweeted last week that they're their own worst enemy. The hardest the team the Toronto Argonauts struggle with the most is the Toronto Argonauts. A lot of self-inflicted wounds and problems, and you still feel that at this point. Games that should have been won, woulda, coulda, shoulda, they didn't. Um, which I just think now it and we can talk about the reasons like we have, but it definitely puts them in a hole. And I think the biggest surprise right now positively has got to be Edmonton, that they're 5-1 right now, and they had so many struggles last year.
I agree with you, Nick, on Edmonton being the biggest surprise. For me, the biggest disappointment, I'm going to go with the BC Lions. I really do. I thought they were going to be one of the top teams in the West this year, but I think they've been. I know they've had injuries, but I would say BC and Toronto. I would say a tie between BC and Toronto and Edmonton. And Nick, as we wrap this up, I would love to talk more, but I've got to get some sleep. CFL week number 8 games coming up. We've got Edmonton at Saskatchewan, Calgary at Winnipeg, Toronto at BC, and next Sunday Hamilton at Montreal. What's your picks for those games? Week 8.
Yeah, that's a tough week. Funny we skipped Ottawa. I don't know about you, but I expected them to still struggle because it's hard with the first year coaching change. But yeah, going into it, I'm going to take Saskatchewan just because they're at home. Winnipeg and Calgary, I think should win that game if they keep passing the way they have been. I'm throwing my must win in this week for Toronto at BC. I think it's that important a game. The difference being 3-4 versus 2-5, being able to have the bye week and returning back home to Toronto. And then I'm going to take Montreal at home against Hamilton.
Edmonton, Saskatchewan. I'm going to go with Saskatchewan being at home. I think Edmonton's going to lose. Calgary at Winnipeg. I'm going to go with the Stampeders. Toronto and BC. I'm going to go with the Argos. I still think the Argos are a better team than BC. And you got Bryce, a backup quarterback, against Chad Kelly. I think the Argos should win this game, and I think they should win by at least 10 points. And then Sunday night, Hamilton at Montreal. I'm sorry, Hamilton fans, but Montreal has got a really good team right now. They're 5-1, and I don't think they're going to end up giving you the game. So I've got Montreal winning. So I'm going with Saskatchewan, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal in week 8.
Yeah, so we're on the same wavelength in that respect. We've both picked the same 4 teams for the games this week. So hopefully they pull it off, because I mean it's the last really difficult week of travel.
I think they will do it, and I think they've got a couple more weeks left at Guelph, and then I believe the first week of August they should be back in Toronto too. And and hopefully I'll be able to get a couple more player interviews, because it's nice being able to drive 7 minutes to practice and get Argo players to interview with, because it would be 2 hours for me from Guelph to Toronto. So I'm going to take advantage the next couple weeks and try to get some more Argo player interviews so we can air here on the Argo Bounce podcast show. Nick, before I wrap the show up, this week we'll show my run, and next week I edited your video. I got rid of where you tripped and fell. I edited it. So next week we'll play your little video of the 40-yard dash, and we're going to play it right now, courtesy of my YouTube channel and filmed by Nick Small. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share to my YouTube channel, Chris Pomay, Live with CDP Talk Show. Nick, I have to admit, by the 30-yard line, I was running out of gas. I have to admit,
Yeah, I mean,
I got good. I was good for the first 30, and then the last 10 yards, I was losing steam.
yeah, I didn't want to say anything as I was recording. I didn't want my mic to pick up anything so they could not disturb the audio. But yeah, it's just you pushed through and you did great. You got the 40 yards in, which is awesome. And like you said, your goal was 14 seconds and you hit in 8 1/4. So I had my phone out with the stopwatch timing it, but I didn't have it open. I didn't have it on screen because I didn't want it to the camera to focus on that instead. But yeah, we can confirm that it's legit. If you even just watch the tape, the full video is less than 10 seconds, and that's not kind of start to finish. So you can retime it yourself. But yeah, it was great and a huge accomplishment, and all the money raised going to the Cambridge Humane Society.
And Chris Belnovich is going to be coming on our show at some point. And even Mike Hogan goes, a bet's a bet. Yep, I ran it under 10 seconds. So we're going to get the behind the scenes Chris on our show, hopefully in the next couple weeks. And yeah, most importantly, we raised money for the Cambridge District Humane Society. Number 2, I didn't get hurt. And number 3, Chris is going to be coming on our show. So it was a win-win for everybody here. And by the way, George is watching on YouTube. Before we wrap the show up, I got BC winning, unfortunately. Okay, George, hopefully you're wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do have to say too, like you ran that in the smoke too, which made it even more challenging. I mean, I know I felt winded after giving it a shot, and some of the other exercise and stuff we're doing, getting loose and warming up, like even that, it made it hard to attempt. So, I mean, even the Argos themselves chose not to practice outside because of how bad the air quality was, and I mean, you could. It's been a long time since we've had anything like that happen where the air quality was that bad, and you could feel it. And yeah, to George, I hope so. I hope that I hate to say it. I hope you're wrong as well. It's tough. Like you don't want to go 0-3 against backup quarterbacks. It makes you worry on some bigger problems. But I mean, I'm really fortunate that after the game this week, I got a chance to say hi to Coach Donovan, Coach Miller, DeMonte Coxey, got to chat with them a little bit. And I think especially when you come off something that hard, it's like, yeah, you got to be better, you got to continue putting the work in. But I think what was nice about this game you could take away is that those of us who cared were there. And I think with a lot of the travel and stuff, it's sometimes hard to forget you're away from your family, friends, people who would come out to support you that can't. And it was nice for at least 1 week. It sort of felt a bit more like home, in that those of us who deeply care about this team were able to show some support and affection to the people we love.
Nick, as we wrap the show up, where can our audience follow you again on social media? The best way of contacting you directly, and your next A Small History podcast.
Yep. So you can follow me on the Small History Podcast on YouTube, or you can follow me Nick Small 38, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm hoping that what I think I want to do this week is I want to plan an episode talking about Jim Corrigal. I want to go into a little bit more detail, break into his career, his time in Barrie and with Kent State University in Ohio, and talk a little bit about his career and maybe break it into a little bit more detail. I think that would be something fun to talk about. And an Argonaut who absolutely deserves more recognition than sometimes he gets credit. I mean, that defensive line in the 7 days, it sucks that they never won a Grey Cup, and we know how close it was with the Leon McQuay fumble there, one play away from doing it. That D line was so iconic, and we still see people wearing Corrigal jerseys. They're still wagon jerseys, guys from that era that meant so much to people growing up. So that I hope to bring some attention to that, I think would be really nice.
Final thoughts tonight on our show.
Yep, this, as we've kind of talked about, now that the game's done, we've talked about it, it's over. Just got to buckle down and prepare for this week against BC. You got to find ways to get points on the board. And yeah, just
Ken just
gotta.
Ken just commented the Ottawa Winnipeg game is still going on in overtime, 34-all now.
Yeah, that's one of the changes. So one of the rule changes now, no more ties. Now that they've played the 2 mini games, I don't know why they don't keep playing the mini game. Now it's just alternating 2-point conversions until one makes it, the other doesn't. So it's at this point, it's almost no longer football, but it is what it is. So that's
I'd rather have a tie. I'll be honest, and I'll say this to the commissioner. I'd rather have a tie than what's going on with the Ottawa Winnipeg game. Just if after 10 minutes, still tied, I'd rather have a tie.
Didn't we just argue last year that you were against ties?
Well, in this case, this game's never going to end. Put it in a tie. Both teams deserve a point.
Look, it just ended. Drew Brown came back, 36-34 Winnipeg. The Ottawa Red Blacks lost, blew it.
And they blew a 26-9 lead at home. A 26-point new. That's what I'm saying. Drew Brown is going forward, Winnipeg's quarterback.
Argos fans, it could always be worse. I'll leave off with that. That.
All right, Nick. Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on in season 5, episode 7 tonight here on this Sunday, July 19th, 2026. I had a busy day today at the Donkey Sanctuary doing media work for them. And then I did some media work for the Hamilton Cardinals of the Canadian Baseball League, who beat London today 3-2. So I've got some content from that to post. And also, the show I'm going to put down on video and audio and some reels and clips as well. And I will hopefully be at Argo's practice this week and get a couple more player interviews for the Argo Bounce podcast show, Nick. And hey, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, and we'll definitely have a show some point next week, probably after the BC game.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Always a pleasure. And as always, to Argonaut fans everywhere, go Argos.
Go Argos, Nick. Good night. We'll talk to you soon. All right, everyone. That wraps up season 5, episode 7 on this Sunday, July 19th, 2026. Argos again coming off a 24-23 heartbreaking loss to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The Argos are back in action on Saturday, July 25th, when they're on the road against the BC Lions, who will be without quarterback Nathan Rourke, who is out with an injury right now, and hopefully he'll be back at some point this season as well. So I want to say thank you to Nick Small. Thank you to everyone watching this show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, Instagram, and the Argo Bounce podcast show is available on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Good Pods, and wherever podcasts are available. So I appreciate everyone watching and listening to the Argo Bounce podcast show. Nick and I will return some point next week, most likely after the BC Lion game, and hopefully Nick and I can talk about an Argo win over the BC Lions as well. Fingers crossed as well. I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you for watching and listening to the Argo Bounce podcast show with Nick Small and myself. And just a reminder, guys, the next Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is going to be Monday, July 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern with special guest, her second appearance, Arma Benoit, a female stand-up comedian out of Atlanta, Georgia. I hope everybody has a great night, and make sure, as you have a great night, you check out my Donkey Sanctuary of Canada content and interview with Grace Sant, who works for the Donkey Sanctuary of Canada, and also check out my interviews with Emily Thompson and pitcher Owen Boone from the Hamilton Cardinals of the Canadian Baseball League. And like Nick says, as always, go Argos, and we'll see you here next week for another edition of the Argo Bounce podcast show, again brought to you by Chris Pomay and Nick Small, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for watching and listening. Good night, everybody.
Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto, Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the